The healer's discovery. Lyra Blackwood lived where others feared to tread, in the spaces between shadow and light. Her cottage sat at the edge of the Whisperwood, where ancient trees groaned with secrets and mist clung to the earth like a lover's embrace. She wasn't like other healers who relied on herbs and poultices. Lyra could see the threads of life force that ran through every living thing, shimmering ribbons of energy that only her eyes could perceive. On this particular autumn evening, the threads appeared agitated, twisting and turning in unusual patterns. Something was wrong in her woods. The energy pulsed with an urgency she had never witnessed before, pulling her deeper into the forest's embrace. The moon cast silver shadows through the canopy as Lyra followed the disturbed threads. Her bare feet moved silently across the damp earth, each step guided by decades of instinct. Her dark copper hair, streaked with strands of silver despite her youth, floated around her like a living thing, responding to the same energy that drew her forward. She found him in a hollow beneath an ancient oak tree. The man lay crumpled, his body broken but somehow still clinging to life. What caught Lyra's attention wasn't his obvious injuries, but the peculiar way his life force flickered, not like a dying flame, but like lightning trapped beneath his skin. Kneeling beside him, Lyra pressed her palms against the earth, letting her awareness sink into the ground. The man's energy signature was unlike anything she had encountered in her 27 years as a healer. Beneath the normal red-gold glow of human life force, there pulsed something ancient and powerful, dormant but not dead. "Who are you?" she whispered, though she knew he couldn't answer. His face was noble, with high cheekbones and a strong jaw, but it was the markings on his skin that made her breath catch. Beneath the dirt and blood, faint silvery lines traced patterns across his flesh, visible only when the moonlight struck them at just the right angle. Lyra knew she had to act quickly. Drawing a deep breath, she gathered her copper hair in her hands, feeling the power that resided within each strand. Unlike normal healers who channeled the energy of the earth, Lyra's gift was tied to her very being. Each strand of her hair could conduct and amplify the life force around her, weaving it into healing magic. She began to sing, an ancient melody taught to her by her grandmother, who had learned it from her grandmother before her. As the notes filled the air, her hair began to glow with an inner light. She wove strands of it between her fingers, creating an intricate pattern above the stranger's chest. The moment her enchanted hair touched his skin, something extraordinary happened. The dormant power within him surged, reaching out to meet her magic. Golden light exploded from the point of contact, enveloping them both in a cocoon of raw energy. Lyra gasped as foreign memories flooded her mind, glimpses of celestial cities, battles fought in realms beyond mortal comprehension, and a darkness that devoured stars. The man's eyes snapped open, revealing irises of molten gold. His hand shot up, grasping her wrist with surprising strength. Where their skin touched, energy crackled like lightning. "What have you done?" His voice was rough with pain but carried undertones of power that made the very air vibrate. "You've awakened it." Lyra tried to pull away, but their energies were entangled now, flowing between them like water seeking its own level. "I'm a healer," she managed to say through the overwhelming sensation. "I was only trying to help." He laughed, though the sound held more wonder than humor. "You're far more than a healer, Lyra Blackwood. You're a catalyst." His grip on her wrist gentled, but the energy continued to pulse between them. "My name is Theron Vale, and you've just shattered a seal that took centuries to create." "How do you know my name?" Lyra demanded, even as she felt the truth of his words reson. Awakening of ancient blood. The night deepened around Lyra's cottage as she helped Theron through the door. His wounds had mostly healed, but the awakening of his dormant power left him weakened, like a butterfly emerging from its chrysalis. The silvery markings on his skin now pulsed with their own inner light, casting strange shadows on the worn wooden walls. "You still haven't explained," Lyra said, settling him into a chair by the hearth. "What seal did I break? What are you?" She busied herself making tea, but her copper hair continued to shimmer with residual energy, betraying her agitation. Theron watched the dancing flames, his golden eyes reflecting the light in impossible ways. Was a celestial warden. One of the last. His fingers traced the glowing marks on his arms. These runes once bound my power, hiding me from those who would destroy what remains of my kind. And I broke that protection, Lyra whispered, guilt coloring her voice. She handed him a steaming cup of elderflower tea, her fingers brushing his. The contact sent another surge of energy between them, smaller than before but just as intense. You freed me, Theron corrected, catching her hand before she could pull away. For centuries, I've walked this realm in a half-life, running from the Void Hunters. They are creatures of pure darkness, feeding on celestial energy. They drove my people to extinction, forcing the survivors into hiding. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying with it the scent of approaching rain. Lyra's windows rattled in their frames, and the candles flickered ominously. She could feel the truth of his words in the way the life force threads around them twisted and coiled. Your hair, Theron continued, reaching out to touch a copper strand that floated near his face. It's not just a conduit for healing. It's woven with celestial essence, the same power that flows through my veins. Somewhere in your ancestry, a celestial warden loved a mortal. Lyra's mind raced back to the stories her grandmother had told her, tales of a great-great-grandmother who had fallen in love with a mysterious stranger with starlight in his eyes. She had always thought they were just fairy tales. The Void Hunters will sense my awakening, Theron said grimly. They'll come for us both now. Your celestial heritage, dormant as it was, protected you before. But now. He stood, his impressive height making the cottage feel suddenly small. We need to prepare. As if in response to his words, the life force threads around them began to vibrate with warning. Lyra felt it first, a wrongness in the energy field, like ink spreading through clear water. Through the window, she watched in horror as patches of darkness appeared in the night sky, blotting out the stars. They're already here, Theron growled. His marking blazed brighter, and suddenly the cottage was filled with the impression of massive wings made of pure light. Lyra, I need you to trust me. Your power and mine, they're meant to work together. It's why you could break the seal. Lyra's hair began to move of its own accord, responding to the approaching darkness. She could feel her gift expanding, evolving beyond mere healing. The threads of life force she had always seen now seemed to bend toward her, waiting to be shaped. What do we do? She asked, pushing down her fear. The darkness outside was growing, consuming the natural night like a cancer. Theron held out his hand, golden energy crackling around his fingers. We wake up the rest of your power. All of it. His eyes met hers, serious and intense. It will hurt. The transformation always does. But it's the only way we'll survive what's coming. Lyra looked at his offered hand, understanding that this was a point of no return. The life she had known, the solitary healer in her quiet cottage, would end the moment she took it. But as the darkness pressed closer, bringing with it a cold that went beyond the physical, she realized she had already made her choice the moment she decided to heal him. She placed her hand in his. The transformation began immediately. Celestial energy surged through their joined hands, racing along her nerves like liquid fire. Her copper hair blazed with light, each strand becoming a channel for power she had never imagined. The markings from Theron's skin seemed to flow across their joined hands, transferring onto her flesh in burning lines of silver. Through the pain, Lyra saw visions, vast cities made of crystal and light, battles fought across the face of stars, beings of pure energy dancing through the cosmos. She saw the Void Hunters as they truly were, tears in reality itself, hungering for the light of creation. She understood why they had hunted the celestial wardens nearly to extinction, and why they would never stop. As the transformation reached its peak, Lyra screamed. Her voice carried harmonics that shattered every piece of glass in the cottage. Her feet lifted from the ground as power rushed into the spaces between her cells, rewriting her very being. Theron held onto her hand through it all, his own power joining with hers, teaching her body how to contain the celestial essence that had always been her birthright. When it was over, Lyra opened eyes that now shone with the same golden light as Theron's. Her copper hair had gained streaks of pure starlight, and silvery runes decorated her skin in delicate patterns. She could feel the power thrumming through her, waiting to be used. Outside, the Void Hunters pressed against her wards, testing them. But now she could see them clearly, and more importantly, she could see how to fight them. "Ready?" Theron asked, summoning his wings of light once more. Lyra raised her hand, watching as threads of life force gathered around her fingers, ready to be woven into weapons or shields. "Ready." Together, they stepped out to face the darkness. The price of power. Dawn broke over the Whisperwood, painting the sky in shades of lavender and gold. Lyra stood in the clearing behind her ruined cottage, her starlight-streaked hair floating in an invisible breeze. She had spent the night learning to fight, and her body ached with a bone-deep weariness she had never known before. The battle with the Void Hunters had been brief but intense. Together, she and Theron had driven them back, weaving light and life force into barriers that the darkness couldn't penetrate. But it had only been a scouting party. The real battle was yet to come. Again, Theron commanded, circling her with predatory grace. His wings of light were folded against his back, casting shimmering patterns on the morning dew. You need to learn to access your power instinctively. In a real fight, there's no time to think. Lyra raised her hands, drawing on the threads of life force that now seemed to sing to her. Where before she had only been able to see and gently guide them, now she could grasp them directly, weaving them into complex patterns with a thought. She formed a sphere of pure energy, threads of copper and gold intertwining. "Stronger," Theron urged. "The Void Hunters won't be gentle. They'll try to tear you apart from the inside out. Your barriers need to be absolute." Sweat beaded on Lyra's forehead as she poured more power into the sphere. The markings on her skin blazed brighter, responding to her effort. She could feel the strain in her newly transformed body, like muscles being pushed to their limit. Theron struck without warning, his own power manifesting as a spear of golden light. It crashed against her barrier with devastating force, sending her skidding backward across the clearing. But the sphere held, its surface rippling but unbroken. "Better," he acknowledged, lowering his hand. "But you're still thinking like a healer. Your instinct is to absorb and redirect. Against the void, that's fatal. They'll use your own energy against you." Lyra let the barrier dissolve, breathing heavily. "Then teach me to think like a warden. Show me how you see the world." Theron's expression softened slightly. He stepped closer, his presence making the air itself seem to vibrate with potential. "Close your eyes," he instructed. "Let me show you." His hands came to rest on her shoulders, and suddenly Lyra's consciousness expanded. Through Theron's perception, she saw the universe as it truly was, layers upon layers of reality, all interconnected by threads of energy and light. The Whisperwood around them was alive with more than just life force, it pulsed with echoes of creation itself. "This is what the Void Hunters want to destroy," Theron's voice whispered in her mind. "They are entropy given form, seeking to unravel the very fabric of existence. The Celestial Wardens were created to maintain the balance, to protect the boundaries between realities." In this enhanced state of awareness, Lyra could see the damage the Void Hunters had already done. Small tears in the fabric of reality dotted the forest like wounds, leaking darkness into their world. Her healer's instincts cried out to mend them. "Yes," Theron encouraged, feeling her understanding. "Healing is part of our purpose. But we must also fight, must sometimes destroy to protect the greater whole." The vision faded, leaving Lyra gasping with the enormity of what she had seen. "How many of them are there?" she asked, opening her eyes to meet Theron's golden gaze. "Legions," he answered grimly. "And they're gathering. The awakening of my power, combined with yours, has drawn their attention. They'll see us as a feast, and a threat." Lyra straightened, squaring her shoulders. "Then we need to be ready. Show me everything you know." The days that followed were a blur of training and preparation. Theron taught her to shape her power into weapons, to fly using wings of pure energy, to move between moments of time. Her copper hair became an extension of her will, each strand capable of channeling massive amounts of power. But the training took its toll. Each night, Lyra collapsed into exhausted sleep, her dreams filled with visions of cosmic battles and dying stars. The power inside her grew stronger, but so did the awareness of what she was losing. Her connection to the simple life force of the forest was changing, becoming something vaster and more abstract. "You're fighting it," Theron observed one evening as they sat beside a fire, sharing a meal of bread and dried fruit. "The transformation isn't complete because part of you is holding back." Lyra stared into the flames, watching the threads of energy dance. "I'm afraid," she admitted. "Not of the power, or even the Void Hunters. I'm afraid of losing myself, of becoming something so far removed from humanity that I forget why we're fighting in the first place." Theron was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of centuries. "That fear is what makes you stronger than pure-blooded wardens like myself. We were born to our power, never knowing anything else. You bridge both worlds. Your humanity isn't a weakness to overcome, it's the source of your greatest strength." As if to prove his point, a pulse of warning rippled through the forest. Both of them stood, powers flaring in response. Through her enhanced senses, Lyra could feel them coming, a vast army of Void Hunters, their darkness blotting out the stars as they approached. "They're here," Theron said unnecessarily, his wings manifesting in a burst of light. Lyra reached up to touch her copper and starlight hair, feeling the power waiting to be unleashed. She thought of her grandmother's stories, of the healer she had been, of the warden she was becoming. Perhaps Theron was right. Perhaps the key wasn't to choose between her two natures, but to embrace them both. "Then let's remind them why they feared the wardens," she said, her own wings spreading behind her in a display of copper and gold. "And show them what humanity can do." The darkness approached, and together they rose to meet it. Shadows unleashed. The army of Void Hunters filled the night sky like an oil slick across the stars, their forms shifting between shadows and nothingness. Lyra and Theron hovered above the Whisperwood, their wings of light creating a beacon in the darkness. The forest below them hummed with nervous energy, as if the very trees understood what was at stake. "Remember," Theron's voice carried through their mental link, "they'll try to separate us. Our power together is what they fear most." His golden eyes glowed fierce in the darkness, his silver markings blazing with contained energy. Lyra nodded, her copper and starlight hair writhing with power. She could feel the life force of the forest below, ready to be called upon. "Then let's give them something to fear." The Void Hunters struck first, a wave of pure darkness surging toward them. Lyra and Theron moved in perfect synchronization, their powers intertwining. Where Theron's raw celestial energy cut through the darkness like a blade, Lyra's life force wove through the gaps, healing the tears in reality that the hunters left behind. They danced through the sky, 2 points of light against the encroaching dark. Lyra's training proved its worth as she twisted between attacks, her hair becoming whips of energy that sliced through shadowy forms. Each time a Void Hunter dissipated, its essence tried to corrupt the surrounding air, but she was there, weaving the frayed edges of reality back together. Above. Theron's warning came just as a massive shape detached itself from the darkness above. This was no ordinary hunter, its form was more solid, more defined, with eyes like dying galaxies. The Void Lord had come to feed. Its voice scraped across their minds like broken glass. The last warden and his half-breed pet. How fitting that you'll die together. The creature's presence alone was enough to make the air freeze, ice crystals forming in delicate patterns that immediately turned black and shattered. Theron's response was a battle cry that shook the heavens. He launched himself at the Void Lord, his power manifesting as a sword of pure light. But the darkness swallowed his attacks, growing stronger with each blow. Lyra watched in horror as the Void Lord's darkness began to seep into Theron's light, corrupting it. His wings flickered, their glow diminishing. She could feel his pain through their bond, feel the darkness trying to unravel his very essence. In that moment, something clicked in Lyra's understanding. She had been thinking of light and dark, life and void, as opposites. But they weren't, they were part of the same whole. Her grandmother's teachings came back to her. Every healer must understand that death is part of life, darkness part of light. The trick is finding the balance. Theron, she called out, both with voice and mind. Stop fighting the darkness. Let it come, but don't let it consume you. Trust me. Their eyes met across the battlefield, gold meeting gold. Without hesitation, Theron pulled back his power, allowing the darkness to approach. The Void Lord surged forward triumphantly, its massive form engulfing Theron. But Lyra was ready. She poured her power not into attacking the darkness, but into anchoring Theron's light. Her copper hair spread out like a web, each strand connecting to the threads of life force in the forest below. She became a conduit, not just for energy, but for existence itself. Through their bond, she sent Theron understanding. The Void Hunters didn't destroy light, they consumed it, tried to fill their own emptiness. But in doing so, they took that light into themselves. Theron understood. Within the Void Lord's darkness, his light began to change. Instead of fighting, he let his power flow outward, filling the spaces between shadows. The Void Lord's triumphant roar turned to one of confusion, then fear. Light began to shine from within the darkness, not fighting it but transforming it. Lyra added her own power, weaving threads of life force through the cracks in the Void Lord's form. Where light and life met darkness, something new emerged, not destruction, but transformation. The Void Lord's form began to dissolve, not into nothingness, but into points of light like newborn stars. The lesser hunters, bound to their lord's power, followed suit. The night sky filled with dancing lights, darkness becoming illumination. As the last of the hunters transformed, Lyra felt her strength giving out. She had poured too much of herself into the weaving, used too much of her mortal essence. Her wings flickered and failed, and she began to fall. Strong arms caught her. Theron held her close as they descended to the forest floor, his own power dimmed but steady. His eyes searched her face with worry. That was either the bravest or most foolish thing I've ever seen, he said softly. Lyra managed a weak smile. Why not both? Her hand trembled as she reached up to touch his face. We did it. But Theron's expression remained grave. We won this battle, he corrected. But there will be others. The Void Lords are as infinite as the darkness between stars. And now they know it's possible to be transformed. Some will seek it out, but others. Others will fight even harder to remain what they are, Lyra finished. She could feel it, more hunters gathering in distant realms, drawn by the power they had displayed. This was only the beginning. She looked up at the sky, where points of transformed darkness still danced like new constellations. Then we'll be ready, she said, even as she felt the price of power settling deeper into her bones. We'll find others like us, humans with celestial blood, wardens in hiding. We'll teach them what we learned today. Theron helped her stand, his wings curling protectively around them both. And what is that? That the greatest power isn't in fighting darkness, she said, watching her copper hair shimmer with starlight, but in transforming it. In finding the balance between what we were and what we're becoming. As if in response, the forest around them pulsed with renewed life, the threads of energy glowing stronger than ever. The battle had changed something fundamental in the fabric of reality itself. The war was far from over, but for the first time, there was hope. Together, they looked toward the horizon, where the first light of dawn was beginning to break. Neither of them spoke of the choice that lay ahead, of mortality and immortality, of power and sacrifice. For now, it was enough to stand in the light of a new day, knowing they had found something greater than either of them had imagined possible. Between two worlds. A month had passed since the battle with the Void Lord, and Lyra's cottage in the Whisperwood was no longer just a healer's home. The small building had become a nexus of power, its walls inscribed with glowing sigils that bridged the mortal and celestial realms. Inside, maps of starlight hung in the air, marking the locations of other awakening powers across the world. Lyra stood at her workbench, her fingers trailing through threads of pure energy as she wove a complex pattern. Her copper hair, now permanently streaked with celestial light, moved with purpose, each strand helping to construct the delicate web of power. The transformation that began with Theron's awakening had continued, slowly but steadily changing her. "You're getting better at that," Theron observed from the doorway. He had just returned from tracking another surge of celestial energy in a distant city. "The weaving is almost invisible now." She smiled without looking up from her work. "I had a good teacher." The pattern she was creating would help locate others like her, humans with dormant celestial blood. Since their victory over the Void Lord, more had been awakening, as if their battle had triggered something dormant in the world's energy. But the victory had come with a price. Lyra could feel it in her bones, in the way her human form struggled to contain the growing celestial power within her. Each day, the choice she had been avoiding drew nearer: remain in this half-transformed state and eventually burn out, or complete the transformation and leave her humanity behind. "3 more awakened yesterday," Theron said, moving to stand beside her. His presence made the energy patterns shift and swirl. 2 in Japan, 1 in Brazil. They're all young, scared. Like you were. Like I still am, sometimes, Lyra admitted. She let the pattern dissolve, turning to face him. "Did you tell them what's coming?" Theron's expression darkened. "They felt it, even without me telling them. The void grows stronger. What we did to their lord, transforming darkness into light, it scared them. The other Void Lords are gathering, preparing for something bigger than we've ever faced." Through their bond, Lyra could feel his concern, his frustration at not being able to do more. She reached out, taking his hand. Where their skin touched, energy sparked and danced. "Then we'll face it together. All of us. Will we?" Theron's golden eyes searched hers. "Lyra, you can't keep balancing between worlds forever. The power inside you grows stronger every day. Without completing the transformation." "I know," she cut him off gently. "Believe me, I know." She walked to the window, looking out at her beloved forest. The threads of life force she had always seen were different now, more complex, showing her layers of reality she had never imagined. "But once I make that choice, there's no going back. I'll never just be a healer again, never feel things the way humans do." Theron moved behind her, his wings of light manifesting unconsciously in response to her distress. "You'll feel things differently, yes. But not less. Look at what you taught me, about transformation rather than destruction, about finding balance rather than just fighting darkness. Your humanity isn't a weakness to overcome, remember?" Before she could respond, a tremor ran through the fabric of reality. Both of them stiffened, their powers flaring in response. Through their enhanced senses, they could feel it, a massive gathering of void energy, unlike anything they had encountered before. "They're not waiting," Theron said grimly. "The Void Lords are making their move now." Lyra closed her eyes, extending her awareness. The tears in reality were growing, spreading like cracks in glass. Through them poured darkness deeper than the space between stars, hunger older than time itself. And caught in the middle were the newly awakening celestial bloodlines, power calling to power across the world. "How long?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "Hours, maybe less." Theron's voice was tight with urgency. "Lyra, I won't make this choice for you. But whatever you decide, it needs to be now. We can't fight this battle with you caught between forms." The cottage trembled as another wave of void energy washed over the world. In the distance, Lyra could hear the forest responding, ancient trees groaning as reality itself began to warp. All her life, she had been a healer, using her gift to mend and protect. Now she faced a choice between letting that life go or watching the world fall to darkness. But perhaps there was another way. "What if we're thinking about this wrong?" she said slowly, an idea forming. "Everyone keeps talking about choosing between humanity and celestial power. But what if that's what makes us strong, the ability to be both?" She turned to face Theron, her power rising with her conviction. "You said it yourself, my humanity taught you about transformation. What if that's what all of this has been leading to? Not becoming purely celestial, but finding a true balance?" Understanding dawned in Theron's eyes. "A new kind of warden," he breathed. "Neither fully human nor purely celestial. Someone who can walk between worlds, understand both sides. And teach others to do the same," Lyra finished. Her hair began to glow brighter as she embraced the idea, accepting both sides of her nature equally. The power rose within her, no longer fighting itself but flowing together like two streams joining into a river. The transformation, when it came, was different from what either of them expected. Instead of burning away her humanity, the celestial power merged with it. Her wings, when they manifested, were neither pure light nor solid matter, but something in between. The markings on her skin settled into patterns that told both stories, her human heritage and her celestial power. Through their bond, Theron felt the change, understood what it meant. "You never cease to amaze me," he said softly. "But will it be enough?" Lyra flexed her new wings, feeling the perfect balance of power flowing through her. "It will have to be. But I'm not doing this alone." She reached out, sending her awareness to the other awakening bloodlines across the world. Through the patterns she had woven, she could feel them, could show them this new path. "The Void Lords want to consume all light," she said, gathering her power. "Let's show them what happens when light and dark find harmony instead." Together, they stepped out of the cottage to face the gathering storm. Above them, reality cracked and warped as the Void Lords began their assault. But this time, they were ready. This time, they understood that true power lay not in choosing sides, but in bridging them. The final battle for reality itself was about to begin, and at its heart stood a woman who had learned to be both healer and warrior, human and celestial, finding strength in the balance between all things. The darkness approached, but Lyra Blackwood smiled. After all, every ending was just another kind of transformation.